Hello everyone, you're listening to the Earful Tower podcast. This is a show about Paris, hosted by me, Oliver G. It's not just about Paris, it's also about France, people in France, people around the capital, but also sometimes it's about the French language, and today is exactly that. I've collected 10 of my favorite untranslatable French words. I'll explain what that means later, but they're 10 really cool words that we absolutely don't have in English. Don't even try to find them, and I'm going to share them with you. So I'm going to be the host today and the guest. It's just me chatting with you all about language and why I love the French language. But if you're sitting there and you're thinking, hang on, Oliver, it sounds like there's a little bit of a spring in your step, a little bit of joie de vivre that you don't usually have. Well, it's absolutely true. It's because big news here. I've got, in fact, big news here with a trumpet. Yes, that's right. The big news is I've brought on my little brother Eddie to help me out with the Earful Tower. Meaning, as you would have heard from that trumpet there, he's going to be doing things like editing the episode, helping me out behind the scenes. And that's really exciting for me because it's going to, well, not only does it take a big load of work off my shoulders, but that also means I can focus on making the Earful Tower podcast and everything that comes with it even better. But I should be fair here, it also means that Eddie can add his magical touches, like that trumpet that I guess made him do. But it means he can help me out with this show to make it better as well. So 2 brains are better than 1, and I'm super excited about it. But especially excited that after all these years, it's not going to be me putting all the music and the production and everything together. So I guess I can get away with asking for more of them. And on that note, I'll be back at the end of the episode to share some Gmail and some personal news and all that kind of stuff. But first, over to you, Eddie. Can we have a jingle? Alright, now let's start easy. What is an untranslatable word? This is something I thought about a lot, and I don't really know why. There's something I find particularly fascinating, not just about languages, but about sort of little intricate, interesting nuances in foreign languages that I've tried to learn over the years. And I always come back to this idea of an untranslatable word being kind of like the holy grail of a foreign word. So let me explain my rules before we get any further. An untranslatable word is a foreign word, a single foreign word that doesn't have a single word equivalent in English. Now, I think it's only fair I give you a bit of background on this concept and probably how I came to be sort of obsessed. Could we say obsessed with it? And also sort of preempt what some people are going to say, in that I've got quite a lot of experience with this. So if we rewind about, let's say, what would it be, 10 years? Goodness me, 10 years now. I moved to Sweden, which is something I very rarely talk about on the podcast. But when I moved there, I started learning Swedish. And the Swedes are extremely proud of a couple of words. One is fika, F-I-K-A, which it's almost like a religion there. What they do, it basically means coffee and cakes, but it's a whole lot more than that. It's, it's like having a coffee with someone, but also having a little nibble on something delicious. And it's like part of the national psyche, fika. And when you talk to the Swedes, they're very proud of this word. Like, they say it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. And at first I was like, yeah, that's just having a coffee. We do that too. They're like, no, it's a concept. And the other one that they're equally proud of is this word lagom, L-A-G-O-M, which just kind of means, I'll tell you what it means. Goldilocks, when she had the 3rd bowl of porridge, was just right. Just enough, not too much, not too little. That's what this word lagom means. And the Swedes love it. And that's a pretty good example of an untranslatable word because it says a lot about the country too. They don't want to, brag about any successes. They want to kind of fly under the radar. They want a lot of things to be equal or perfect or just lagom. So anyway, when I moved to Sweden, they were quite obsessed with this idea of these words that they had that no one else did. I didn't care that much for those 2 words, but I loved the concept of words that couldn't be translated. And over the years, back then I was working at a newspaper that did Sweden's news in English. And I used to do these stories where I'd collect sort of 10 at a time of these words and share them with people. And you can probably tell that 10 years ago, at least, the news in Sweden was pretty calm that they let me write those stories. It was pretty fun too. Anyway, as the years progressed, I found more and more of these cool words, and then wouldn't you know it, I moved to France and started discovering a lot more of them. So, as the reason I bring all that up is to give you a bit of history, but also to let you know that when I used to write these lists, I used to always get emails from someone and go, well, of course, we have the word for lagom in English, it's just right. And I'm like, no, firstly, you used two words. Secondly, you didn't capture the concept. You couldn't go up to an Australian person and say, hey, just right, and they'd know exactly what you're talking about. It doesn't work. Forget it. That's me trying to preempt some emails I'm going to get. But what I've got today is 10 emails that I consider to be truly untranslatable words that I really like in French that I've gathered over the years that I've been living here. And I'd love to know what you think. So if you follow my newsletter, which I'll put in the link below, you'll know that I've already sort of, I was going to say warned, I've already let everybody know that I'm going to be talking about this in today's episode. And I started it with a little ode to one of my new favorite words in French, which is, I'll say it in French first, it's rebonjour, or the word bonjour, so hello, with R-E at the start. And what it literally means, like if you were to translate it exactly literally, it's like re-hello. You know how you put re at the start of anything, like redo, or, renew? It's just like that, re-hello, which we obviously don't have in English. But it's a lot more than that too. You all know that the French people, it's very important to be polite here. You've probably heard that you should say bonjour when you walk into a bakery and so on and so on. What I like is if you go into the bakery and if you have the opportunity, you can say rebonjour on the second time that you see them. It also works for bonsoir as well, rebonsoir. And what I like to think is that maybe 8 times out of 9, you'll get a little chuckle or a grin from the person you're talking to. So let me explain how to use it, and then how the untranslatable bit is easy. The closest we have in English is like, hello again, but it's not one word, and it would never make someone really sort of smile knowingly that you've used a little language hack, right? So, rebonjour, you walk into the shop, you see let's say the man behind the counter in the bakery, you wave to him, you say bonjour, he says bonjour. You spend the next 10 minutes, because you're in Paris, picking all the favorite baked treats that you want, and then you get to the counter with the same man again. And that's when you'd say, rebonjour, and he would smile, 8 times out of 9 anyway, and he'd go, rebonjour, jeune homme, young man. That's what they say to me sometimes. And I love it. It kind of sums up that kind of politeness. It's like a kind of almost awkward, cutesy little, almost bit of wordplay. And I don't think it's super common that people say it. So whenever I say it, obviously as a foreigner and probably a very noticeable foreign accent, the French people seem to enjoy it. So there's the first one to add to your list. Try it out. Let me know how it goes. Rebonjour. But don't just walk into a shop and say it, because that'd be really weird. Hello again? No. Rebonjour, the second time. Maybe bakery is not the best place to use it. Maybe it would be like in a clothes shop or something where you do spend a good 10 minutes away from someone else. Anyway, use it how you want. Report back. Let me know how it goes. The second one on my list is the one that's probably the most common one. And I think you all know the word. It's flâneur, or the verb flâner, which means to wander about aimlessly. And that kind of, you're probably thinking, wanderer, or something like that. It's not, it's beyond that. And it's very tied to Paris. It's a word that I believe comes, I believe the etymology is French, but the idea is sort of not having much of a care in the world, any direction that you want to go. Forget that. It's just wandering around. It's something I do in Paris a lot, and it's a city that, this is a whole podcast topic, but it's a city that was really built for walking, or at least rebuilt for walking. And it's just, when you go around those streets admiring the architecture or the people or whatever you want to admire, you're a flâneur as a noun. You are a flâneur. Or when you're doing it, you're flâner, as in you're flanering around. So that word we don't really have in English. You couldn't, if you said to someone, if you're from, let's say you're from Hibbing in Minnesota, and someone says, what are you going to do this afternoon? Be a wanderer. They go, what? What are you talking about? It doesn't make sense. But if you said it in Paris, what have you been doing these past few weeks? I've been a flâneur. They'd go, yes, I get it. I agree. That's a good thing to do. So there's a lovely word, flâneur. And if you're a woman or a girl, you'd be a flâneuse with an E-U-S-E at the end. The next word on my list is, and I meant to add this at the start, but I know that other people write these kind of lists, but I don't think they're as pedantic or as picky as I am about how to write a list like this, because you always see the same weird like phrases that I'm convinced that French people never use. And I think a lot of the people that write these lists on their blogs, I think they're all copying each other. Because sometimes I'll see one and I'll even ask a French person, I'll be like, do people actually say that? They go, I've never heard it. So the one that I always come back to, there's one that's called, I think it's l'esprit d'escalier. And the literal meaning is like the spirit of the staircase. And apparently it means, when you think of a good comeback just a little bit too late, I wish I said that. And I remember asking some French friends, they'd never heard of it. So it already was off my list, but also like it's not a word. My rule is for some reason word for word. Anyway, the other point is there's so many of these idioms and stuff. I'm not even going to touch it. These are all single words. So the next one's a really basic one, and it's kind of an interesting one too. If you ask a French person the word for yes, obviously the answer is, the translation is oui, O-U-I, the word for yes. But the cool thing about the French language is there's actually two ways to say yes. The second way is you can say si, S-I. And that's something we don't really have in English at all. And the idea is you can use that way to answer if someone asks you a question that's kind of negatively tinged. So a really easy example would be, you're not listening to the Eiffel Tower podcast, are you? And instead of saying oui, you'd say si. And it kind of means, the closest I could say to in English is it's like say, oh yeah, I am. Like that, like this kind of, you're mistaken. You know what I mean? It's like, it's untranslatable, so I can't give you a translation. But to just translate it with the word yes doesn't do it justice. So, you're not from Australia, are you? See? Imagine that. And it took me ages to, when I learned Swedish, they have the exact same thing. The word for yes is ja, and the word for yeah is jo, Y-O. And I lived, the first 5 years I lived here, I never said it because I never was quick enough. And I've never said that in French before. In fact, it's a goal of mine. And I think if you're learning French and you've used this si, S-I, to answer yes when someone asks you a negatively tinged question, as I said before, then you've really come far in your French. That's one of my markers. In fact, I'd say if you've used that, you're fluent by my books, if you care for that measurement. So that's on my list of things to do. Si. I should add also that the word flaneur is very translatable into Swedish because they, rather smartly, they took the word and they use it. So they'd say att flanera. So we should just do it too. We should take these words and put them in English. I'm all for it. In fact, all we have to do is write it in a book and then it exists. The next two words I've got go together and they're really relevant right now. And I talked about them in my book. The first is ancien and the second is juilletiste. And these are really cool because, like I said before, they teach you a little bit about the French mentality, right? So the idea of an ancien, which is a very hard word to pronounce as far as I'm concerned, and to spell. I'll spell it for you. It's A-O-U, but the U's got like a little circumflex hat on it, so A-O-U-T-I-E-N, ancien. And what that means is, like, if I had to translate it in as short or as few words as possible, it's like an August holiday, right? But it's a lot more than that. It means a lot more than that. Because to understand that, you have to understand that there are the counterparts to these holiday in August people, and they're called the juilletistes. And a juilletiste, of course, are the people that take a holiday in July. But even with that, you're not really capturing it, right? So a person who holidays in July rather than August might be a better way to say it. Because, step back a sec, everyone in France takes big summer holidays. That's kind of the crux of this. They usually take a holiday for like 4 weeks. And typically they do it in summer. And typically they do it in July. Now, half of the people actually do it in August. Meaning you've got two camps of people. You've got the juilletistes and the anciens. And these words define them. They're used, if you read the French newspapers, you'll see, like, that's the kind of word you'd see in a headline. It'd say, like, the juilletistes have left. The anciens are gone. Paris is empty. Or, heavy traffic as the Haussiens, meet the Juilletistes. Oh my gosh, that's actually a thing. There's there's a bonus one for you, chassé croisé, which is when all the people that are taking their July holidays are coming back from the coast. Typically, they're all going out to the coast, and all the people who holiday in August are going out to the coast, and the roads are just mayhem, and that's called the chassé croisé. But let's not even get into that. So, in terms of the untranslatable, and this is something I wrote in Paris on Air, I wrote that to start capturing it, a juilletiste is a person who holidays in July rather than August. But if you think about it, even that doesn't explain it for someone in the southern hemisphere where July and August are winter months. In France, you can call someone a juilletiste. In Australia, for example, you'd have to say, she takes July off for her summer holiday rather than August. So, there's two more for you. It tells you a lot about the country that they have words to describe people who take a whole month. And there's nothing negative about those words. It's just, I guess the word was born out of the need to describe this kind of phenomenon in the country of France. I love it. So where are we up to? We've done 5 words. I think now's a good time for a little pause. As probably a lot of you know, I don't have adverts on this podcast, but in order to build it, I've been using the podcast as its own advert, really. So what I'll say is, if you're enjoying this show, why don't you press pause, call your friend now and say, Janet, you like language, don't you? You like French. Why don't you have a listen to this show, The Eiffel Tower? Subscribe. Have some fun. I also want to do a shout out to the Patreon supporters, the people who for a monthly fee, in fact, I'll talk to the Patreon supporters rather than trying to bring new guys on. Thanks to all you guys who are supporting the show, and I hope you've been enjoying the extra content, like the big Zoom conferences. What a boring word. Like the big Zoom chats we had over the weekend, where, I revealed 3 pretty big things about the future of the Eiffel Tower. But it's you guys, so thank you. It's you guys who keep this show going. Without you, I would have given up a long time ago, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. But if you do want to check it out and you're one of those people who haven't signed up, the Eiffel Tower is the name of the Patreon account. So you go to patreon.com/the Eiffel Tower. Lots of good stuff there. The other thing to tie in today's topic with the other thing I can promote a little bit here is I wrote a book. It's called Paris on Air. You can get it kind of anywhere online, but it would mean an awful lot to me if you bought it from my site. And I'll just quickly explain why. Because I get a lot of emails from people who buy it from like Amazon and stuff like that. And that's really lovely that you do it. But the problem with that is, I think I published the book about 4 months ago, and I still haven't seen a cent from Amazon. And considering I self-published the book, those cents and hopefully those dollars are important to me. So it means a heck of a lot if you buy it through my website, theeiffeltower.com/memoir. And if you do that, we've got it in 4 or 5 cities around the world: Toronto, Chicago, Melbourne, and Paris. We'll ship it to you and it'll be cheaper. So please do it that way. But enough about how you can help the show. I want to get back to these untranslatable words. And rather cheekily, perhaps, the next 2 untranslatable words are talked about in my book, Paris on Air. So what better way to explain why I like them than to read from my book? So if you are planning to read the book and you don't want to spoil half a page, shut your ears right now. Otherwise, here it is. This is from page, who knows what page it is, but it's chapter 4.2, which is called A Car Red. And it's all about language. Obviously, car red is because in French they say une voiture rouge rather than, like we do in English, a red car. So where was I up to? In fact, you know what we'll do is, now that I've got an editor, I'm going to play you a section from the audiobook that I made for the book about 2 more of my favorite untranslatable words. Take it away. Anyway, collecting untranslatable words is one of my favorite things to do, and they're not always charming little insights into a country's vacationing habits. The French also have a single word for cutting someone's throat, égorger, and also for throwing someone out a window, défenestrer. Another favorite I have, which is pretty difficult to explain if you don't know French, is the verb tutoyer, to be less formal with someone.
To understand this, though, you have to know that in France there are two ways to say the word you. There's the formal version, vous, that you'd use with older people or strangers. Then there's the less formal version, tu, which you'd use with friends, children, animals. So the verb tutoyer more specifically means to use the tu form. I love this word, tutoyer. It's absolutely untranslatable. It says a lot about French culture, and it makes no sense at all to English speakers. And the word vous voyez, which means to use the vous form, is an equally great and untranslatable word. But maybe we should leave it there before it gets too confusing. All this is to say that the French language is a rich thing, and for me, it was never more beautiful than the day a senior architect told me I could tutoyer her, almost 2 years after I'd started working in the building. I didn't have to say vous any longer. I could finally say tu. There was a rush of emotions, a feeling of pure acceptance, equality, friendship even. I wonder if there's a word to describe the pleasure that comes with social formalities being swept away. But who cares if there's not? It was a lovely feeling to be considered as an equal with one of the older architects. I felt warm and welcome, perhaps for the first time in that office. To this day I'm not sure, but I think the architect chose to accept me because she also rode a scooter around Paris and felt that deep down we weren't so different after all.
So there you go. That was just a little bit from the audiobook. If I call it an audio experience because I got, I think about 20 people lent their voices to this. And since it's the second printing edition of the book, I've made a combo deal that you can get the audio experience and the book for €30, postage included. You can find it all on theeiffeltower.com/memoir. I mean, not so bad in terms of ads, is it? It's a lot better than a mattress ad, I think. So thanks for listening to that. Now on with the last couple of these words. There's 3 more that I've got here, all kind of different, all kind of interesting, untranslatable words. The next one is a pretty simple one. It's chez, C-H-E-Z, or if you're in America, C-H-E-Z, which is, it's kind of cool to think about. You know, you've probably heard chez, like a restaurant that's called Chez Oliver or whatever. You say it in French to mean kind of at the home of or at the place of. So you'd say, let's go to the restaurant Chez Oliver. That works actually in America. Like what it really means in French is if you said, you know, tonight I'm sleeping chez vous, it's at your place. Or this afternoon I've been at chez Lena, at Lena's place. So it's just the kind of, and I think people like that because of the fact that it's very French and it's very cool, but that's probably why we hear so many restaurants have got that around the world, because it's a neat little concept. Chez vous, chez Oliver, chez Lucy. So one word in French, we don't have an equivalent. The closest we have is at the place of, or at the home of, or at the place. You know, it just doesn't work. It's just a neat little word. I like that. I thought I'd toss it in because it was kind of a cool one. I got 2 more here to round out this list of untranslatable words. The next one is châtelaine, which I really like because, and it's also talked about in if you read my book, you know that I had a wild weekend for my birthday party in a chateau. And to paint the picture is when we were on the way out there, we were reading their website, and it was written in such colorful language that it kind of made us laugh. And just to picture it, this was a huge, beautiful old chateau with, with a moat and turrets, everything. And in it talked about, for a weekend, why don't you feel like you're a chatelaine? I was like, what on earth is a chatelaine? And it's actually, I think that this word exists in Old English, but obviously we never hear it. I mean, you probably never heard it in your life, and neither had I. But a chatelaine is a woman, specifically a woman who runs a castle or who owns a castle, right? And châtelain, the masculine version, would be for a man that does the same. And I like that too because it speaks a little bit about something we don't have so much in America or in Australia, for example. It's just the concept of chateaus or castles at all. We don't have them. So it's very rare to come across châtelaine in the countries where I know a lot of people listen to this podcast. So I thought I'd throw that one in, châtelaine. And technically, it has a little hat on the A of the word châtelaine, which if you got the first printing edition of my book, Paris on Air, you'll see there's no little hat on it. But the second printing edition will have a hat, and that's because some people, and I mean very, very, very few people, messaged me to ask why I hadn't put some of the hats on some of the words. And I thought, well, let's not risk that with the second edition. I fixed them all up. You got to be careful. As I say, people like to email in, but I love it. Keep emailing me in. I'm not complaining. The last word is a fun one, and I've talked about it on the show before. It doesn't really fit in with the other words because you could kind of translate it. It's more of just a fun word I wanted to end on, and that word is vachement. I love this, vachement. And it's, if you were to literally translate it, vache, of course, is cow. And mont, M-E-N-T, vachement is like saying cowly. You know, like extrêmement is extremely. So vachement is cowly. So you could say something is cowly good. It makes no sense. It's not an untranslatable word really because it just means like awfully or extremely. But it's an adverb that I just think has a real charm on it. And I have no idea, but I wonder if it ties into France somewhat. Why do they use the word cow to say that something's really good? I've got no idea. It's been I know there's a lot of cows in France, and I know that they make a lot of cheese and milk, which is also really popular. But I just thought I'd end on a fun one, a vachement crazy example of a French word that I think also if you use that word in a legit conversation with a French person, I think by my calculation, you're fluent as well. So if you can use that vachement or that C, then I think you're doing something right, and you're probably doing something better than I am. But there you go. That makes my 10 untranslatable words. You'll be able to find the spellings and the brief examples of it on the website, theeiffeltower.com. Anyway, that makes it for the top 10 list. I'll be back. You know what? Usually this would be the end of the interview, and I'd play some music. But I think I'll just get straight into my last chat without it. Save Eddie a little bit of hassle on the editing here. And I thought I'd finish with a little bit of Gmail, but I've got a fun one that I want to read out. It's on a review on Goodreads for my Paris on Air, for my new book. It's from Adrienne Charles, or Adrienne Charles. Charles, I don't know, maybe she's French. She said, I first heard Oliver G earlier in the year when he was being interviewed on the ABC in Australia. That would be Rod Quinn, a regular listener to the show that calls me up and asks me about the show sometimes. He says, oh no, he doesn't say anything. It's Adrienne. She says, the Eiffel Tower sounded interesting, so I signed up for the regular newsletter. Thank you, Adrienne. I've seen some of the walking videos. It's great to see Paris, and some places are even familiar to me, having been there twice. I also discovered the artwork of talented Lena. Well, usually it's lovely Lena there, Adrienne, but you're new. Fair enough. I had a print posted to some family. Lena's artwork on the cover of Paris on Air is captivating. I ordered the book directly from Oliver and it arrived soon after with a delightful inscription from the author. I must say I've thoroughly enjoyed Oliver's memoirs and he really takes me on a journey as he's a way of engaging the reader and one can relate to the highs and lows of his life journey. A talented entrepreneur with a gift for storytelling but with honesty and humiliating. I'm glad he found his true life in Lena and they'll make a great team for many years to come. I'm sure the next book will be well worth waiting for. Congratulations and best wishes. What a lovely review. It's so kind of you, Adrienne, to write that. And so kind of all you others who've done that. I suppose it helps people to decide whether to read the book, but it's really nice to see someone new to the show and new to the book read it and like it. So welcome to the club, Adrienne. I'm really glad to have you here. But she mentioned a couple things I want to touch on there. The newsletter. You can find it, the easiest way to find my newsletter is to go to my website, theeiffeltower.com, just scroll down and it pops up, goes, hey, you want to subscribe to the newsletter? And then, I think a lot of people send out emails, but I really put some time into my weekly newsletter and it tells you everything that you may have missed and some things that are happening in Paris. Check it out. I think there's 3,000 people there. I know there's a lot more people that listen to this show, so go check it out. The other thing that Adrienne mentioned is the ABC radio in Australia. There's a guy called Rod Quinn, and he works on the ABC. If you're from another country, perhaps it's kind of the equivalent of it's the biggest channel there, I suppose. It's like the equivalent of BBC in England, I suppose. And Rod calls up and just wants to know what's going on in Paris. And I mentioned him in the book briefly. He was a big fan of the honeymoon season where we traveled around France on the scooter. Anyway, he called me the other day as well, and I thought, I got to send him a book. So I've sent him a copy of the book, and hopefully that'll bring in a few more Australian listeners. So if you are from Australia and you're listening, maybe I can thank Rod Quinn for that. But part of a project I'm working on is trying to grow this show a little bit more in Australia, where I know there are people who love Paris, but I don't think they found the show yet. So if you are from Australia and you're new around here, welcome. There are a lot of Americans and people in Paris who listen to this show too, and it's all one big happy group, I think. So yeah, welcome Australians, and thanks to Adrian for signing up on the newsletter. Now, to finish up, I mentioned at the start of the episode that Eddie is helping Eddie, my brother, or as he refers to himself, the star of Paris on Air, the book. He's helping out with the editing and a few other things behind the scenes, and the idea with that is it'll free me up to improve the show. I think it's very seldom that I talk about sort of behind the scenes on how this podcast is made, but for the past 3 or how long has it been now? 3 or 4 years, I've been doing like literally everything. So I record the podcast, I edit it, I put it up on the internet, I share it out on social media channels, all that stuff. And that's fine, I've enjoyed doing it. But it got to a point now, especially with a lot more emails coming in and things like a book to push as well. It got to a point that I wasn't able to keep growing the content the way that I want to do, the same kind of episodes that I want to do with all the other stuff to worry about. So having Eddie on will hopefully allow me to stretch my wings and keep improving the show. I'm looking forward to it. If you were there in yesterday, as in Sunday's Zoom chats, you'll know a few of the exciting projects. There's three that we're working on. I'm not going to talk about it on the podcast so much. I'm keeping those as a treat for the Patreon supporters, but there are going to be some fun changes around here, and I'm really excited to share them with you. But in the meantime, thanks so much for listening. I hope you have a lovely week wherever you are, and I'm looking forward to talking to you again next Monday with a fresh episode of the Eiffel Tower. Thanks very much. Have a good week. Bye-bye.
I don't really know where we are. I just wanna look at the stars.